that in our core.
That's good. That's good. Now, Chris, let's finish with you real quick. You are a game designer by trade with over 25 years experience in the industry. Now, you've shipped titles like Forza Motorsport, Project Gotham Racing, Crackdown, I could go on. For those unfamiliar with the role of design and product development, would you mind elaborating a little bit?
Sure, happy to. Really, there's two primary roles. One is for the customer, and that is purely to help galvanize a team to deliver something which is unexpectedly fun. And I use those words "unexpectedly fun" very purposely, because frankly, when you're in an entertainment industry and you're making a game or you're playing that game, it's very challenging to beat the expectation that somebody has when they expect it to be fun. And so you're really trying to do something that delivers that little bit of extra unexpected fun, where it makes people talk and they talk about your game. They're like, "Hey, wait, they did what? Oh, I wouldn't have expected they do that. I need to try that out." And it's really that last little bit of getting them something which they didn't expect, right? Like if you're going to go drive a Ferrari, you're going to expect to be fast, but you're not going to expect the guy next to you to, hit the button that busts out the booster rockets on it. And that's going to be the thing that you remember because you weren't expecting it, right? You were expecting it to be great. You're expecting it to be fast, but those booster rockets were the thing that took it over the top. And that's really what you're trying to do on the game. You're trying to take that player on a journey and make them feel something. And the second role for design really amongst the team, it's really regarded as the discipline that helps tie everything together into something pure, something very focused. Because there are times when, hey, there might be business questions at hand or tech questions or just design questions themselves. And designers are really the ones pinned to, hey, here's where this can go. Here's that vision. Here's if this thing didn't go right. Here's how we can pivot and still deliver an excellent customer experience. And in the end, whether you're an audio designer or game designer, combat designer, or UX designer, there's a bunch of different flavors. Your job is to deliver something focused, pure, and that takes the player on a journey and makes them feel something.
That's good. I feel like whenever I see design, we have this conversation all the time in the office, Chris. It's like good products start with good design. So I love having you on the panel. I think this is going to be a great conversation. So let's get started. Let's get at this. I know y'all have been waiting for this. Jason, let's kick off with you. There was some big news this week on Xbox Series X. Can you tell us how the technical advances allow developers to unlock new and innovative gaming experiences?
Absolutely. This has been a really exciting week for the team. The team's been working really hard on Xbox Series X since 2016, and to finally be able to actually share some of the details of what we've been working on has definitely been a highlight for all of us. As you mentioned on Monday, we shared many of the details of our next generation console, and it's really about enabling transformative gaming experiences that we've never seen in the living room. In the early days of the planning process, the design of the Xbox Series X was really directly influenced by three key principles. Like I mentioned before, first and foremost is developer and gamer feedback. When I was leading the Xbox Advanced Technology Group, the team worked closely with developers all across the world, making everything from the industry's best blockbusters to competitive esports titles to extremely innovative ideas in game design coming from some of the industry's best independent creators. And we really listened, learned, and helped them overcome the technology barriers that were really limiting their aspirations for the games that they were creating, whether that was in hardware, software, or even the developer tools that we provide. And then I think another key aspect of it as well is gamers are also demanding higher and more stable frame rates. So we challenge ourselves to not only build a system that could reliably deliver high-quality 4K game experiences at 60 frames a second, but we challenge ourselves to go even further and to deliver frame rates up to 120 frames a second, frame rates that historically you never thought were possible in the living room. So it was really about kind of pushing those boundaries and really understanding what developers and gamers were really looking for in a next generation console. And then the second one is just really looking at the innovations in technology with an eye towards the future. Everything from advancements in CPU performance, more efficient usage of GPU, next generation graphics innovation and capabilities, things like hardware accelerated ray tracing or variable rate shading or mesh shaders. It's really about giving developers new kinds of tools to really build those rich dynamic worlds that players like to spend time in. And another great example of that is with the current generation, we're basically at the upper bounds of what's possible with a traditional rotational drive technology. And it was really constraining the game design that developers were having, where they'd have to arbitrarily funnel players through different tunnels or pathways, or, you'd have a fast travel system where it'd take a super long time to teleport from one side of the map to another. So, with these insights, it was very clear that we would need to invest in things like SSD level IO performance or a revolutionary new architecture to make it easier for game developers and game engines to stream assets in real time from the storage solution into the memory and the CPU and the GPU so that you can get that real rich, high fidelity, dynamic living world that players expect. And then I think the final principle or the final thing that we really thought about in the very early days was when you design a new console hardware platform, you're really setting the direction for gaming and game development for the next 7 to 10 years. So you really have to have a solid vision as to where you see game development going and the kinds of gaming experiences that players want to have. So as we looked into the future with new innovations like Project xCloud and game streaming, we knew we had an opportunity to make key decisions in the design of the system that could open up brand new possibilities for developers. And one thing that we learned very early on as we started working closely with the Azure team is some of the same challenges that we have in delivering a high performance game console in your living room are the same kinds of challenges that we have in the data center. Things such as delivering high performance for gaming workloads while minimizing power consumption and thermal management. And having that vision of a future really helped shape how we designed our custom SoC that's powering the Xbox Series X and the overall system architecture so that we could make sure that we're providing a common and consistent hardware, software, and development platform that makes it easier for developers to bring the games that they're developing today on console and PC into the cloud in the future. And many of the technologies that we're innovating and incubating with the Xbox Series X are being brought to PC and brought to Project xCloud. And it's because we designed the system with the future in mind from the very outside of the program.
Wow. Yeah, Jason, this is blowing my mind. Like, having worked on the team for a while and kind of getting a chance to see what this thing looks like in person is kind of like shocking me right now. This is actually the first time I've actually I can't touch it. My fingerprints will get on it. It's one of those things like, this is amazing. I geek out about this all the time. And you said something that has really just blown my mind a bit, which is this is one of the first times we've built a console thinking about where the next generation, the next iteration, the next paradigm shift in game development is really going. And you talk about the cloud. Can you touch a bit on the role that the cloud plays as you're thinking about the development of Xbox Series X?
Sure. So, there's certain scenarios, this is a custom SoC. This is a custom architecture that we've designed from the ground up to make sure that we're delivering that high fidelity gaming experience. But as you think about things like the cloud and what we're doing with Project xCloud, there's certain things that, for example, virtualizing the display controller as an example. If we're just designing the system in such a way to make only a high-performing gaming console, that's an investment that you wouldn't make, or it's a design decision you wouldn't really think about. But you only really get one chance to make those decisions, and it's when you're designing the chip, when you're designing the overall system architecture. So as we think about how developers are going to take their games and move them into the cloud, or how they're going to be developing games in the cloud in the future, we knew we needed to invest in certain key technological investments from day one to make sure that we're providing a clear path for developers so that developers don't actually have to go and significantly alter their game or rewrite their game from scratch. We want to provide kind of a path as game streaming becomes much more prevalent, and accessible. And ultimately, it's really about empowering developers to reach customers all across the world, whether they choose to own a console, they choose to play on a PC, or maybe streaming is going to be their primary experience. We want to provide that easy path for developers.
There's something you said. I have one more follow-up question on this, and this is something that like a lot of teams, a lot of people that may be watching this maybe just don't know, is the lead time that it takes in order to put together a console. Can you talk to us a little bit about, like, how, you mentioned making technology decisions of what the hardware is going to be in this box. It's not like, oh, it's 2 months from launch, let's just put this thing in there. Like, there's a whole process to that thinking. Can you elaborate just a little bit on just some of the work that it takes to kind of think through where this is going to be in time?
Sure. You know, we really started the development of Xbox Series X in 2016, before we'd even released the Xbox One X. So to your point on lead times, you know, it's multiple years of investigation, of prototyping, of trying to figure out where the technology roadmap's going, understanding from developers what their game design aspirations are. You know, there's entire new genres of games or new kinds of game experiences that, you know, have come up in the last 2 to 3 years. So a lot of it is really kind of that partnership with our development partners, both at Xbox Game Studios as well as the best creators all across the industry. But it's also making sure that we have a clear vision of where do we see gaming going as Team Xbox. And once again, you know, our goal is to get, Catherine mentioned earlier, you know, really reaching out to those 2 billion gamers all across the world. So it's like, how do we make it as easy as possible? And what are the investments that we need to be making so that customers all across the world can have the same great gaming experience that those of us who grew up gaming on consoles know and love today, and do it in such a way that makes it easy for developers.
That's good. I think that's a perfect segue as well. Let's dig into the next bit of this. We want to talk a little bit about Project xCloud. And Catherine, I'm going to bring this next question to you. Would you mind talking us through the approach of Microsoft bringing Project xCloud to market? And before you jump in, I actually am going to, everybody follow me on the camera. This is going to be fun. We're doing this in real time. I have a server blade over here from Project xCloud that I also was so excited when I heard this was going to be here. This is an actual Project xCloud server blade that is in the footprints of Azure at the global data center level, and it is so cool to take a look at the guts of this thing because, wow, like the tech that went into this, the making of this is unbelievably impressive. Catherine, back to the question. Walk us through Microsoft's approach in bringing xCloud to market.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Brian, when you just took off there, I had no idea where you were going. I was just like, well, where's he going now? But you're seeing our blade. And I mean, it is so cool. And it is, you know, Rachel said it earlier, our product's a testament to the amazing teams that build them. And, you know, looking at this, I just couldn't be more proud. So going back to what we believe the journey is, we think we are at the very beginning of a multi-year journey with streaming. You know, there is much more we don't know about streaming than we do know right now. And that's exactly why we came to market with our preview plan, where you'll remember, and it seems like an age ago now, but we started last October with just 4 games in preview. And since then, we've expanded countries. We have more than 90 games. We've gone just from Android. We have an iOS test flight running. And as we talked about before, we will also be bringing this to Windows 10 PCs. This really is about a journey of us learning together with the developer community, and to see the passion with which developers have leaned into this with us and the learnings that we're doing together has just been mind-blowing. It just makes me so proud to be a part of this team. That's awesome. And you mentioned just a moment ago the response from some of the game development community. Can you share a little bit about, like, how has it been working with game developers? What have they been saying in building for Project xCloud? Yeah, no, absolutely. You know what? I'm reminded actually back to a story. We spent a lot of time obviously talking with developers before we launched into preview. And every time we would go to a meeting with a developer, we would take their game running on a mobile phone and hand it to them to play. And at that point, there was always silence in the room, and we kind of would look around the room and think, well, what's going on? And then the partner would start sort of looking around the room and, you know, talking to their teams and saying, well, who worked on this? And it was very clear that no one had worked on it, because actually when you build for Xbox, you build for xCloud. And what we had done is just made the game work automatically for them, really, and got it up and running pretty much in a matter of minutes. And that first stage, which we call lift and shift, literally taking a game that you've built for Xbox and putting it in the cloud, literally blew the developers away. So that's been absolutely fascinating. And then we've just learned, you know, so much about how gamers are using streaming. And basically, you know, we're seeing gamers play more across the board, which has been fascinating for developers. You know, they're not just playing more on xCloud, they're also playing more on Xbox and PC. And specifically, we're learning about different sort of genre types and what gamers who stream their games are enjoying perhaps more than others. So it really is a journey of us learning together. But we also are aware that there are some developers who want to be doing more to optimize their games for the cloud. And in those circumstances, we really talk about it as cloud aware. This is the work we're doing around touch controls to support native interaction, or some of the APIs that we're developing that provide device side characteristics so that developers can optimize for the much smaller screen size. So as you can see, it's literally this symbiotic journey that we're on with our developers to really, begin to optimize this experience. You know, when I talk to my team, I really talk about, you know, the speed of our learning cycles. Whenever you're bringing a new technology to market, it's all about learning. And the faster we learn, the better we're going to optimize this product. So that's absolutely the journey that we're on.
Oh, so good. I always remember when I'm sitting in rooms with you, like one of the things you say is we always have to keep learning. We always have to keep improving. I feel like that's really an ethos that you've helped bring that along with the team, which is just so good. Chris, let's pivot over to you. As a service and platform provider, what do you think Microsoft's role is in helping game developers navigate new technologies like Xbox Series X and Project xCloud?
Frankly, if it's two words, it's eliminating friction, right? I mean, the game teams have a vision for what they want to build, and really as a publisher, your job is to let them just execute on that and multiply the effort against it. And there are things that sometimes are tricky to manage when you're a studio, right? Large or small. Sometimes business questions come up, and you want to sell things in a different way, and the publisher does or doesn't support that. And so it's how do you push that and work with the publisher to get them to offer things in a different way. Sometimes it's technology. Hey, there's this new tech, we don't quite know what to do with it, or we have something and we want you to push it even farther. I mean, when I think about both xCloud and the Series X, right? More so than the GPU, as a game designer, the game designs that you can build because you have a much more powerful CPU is actually super interesting, because that's, for a while now, we've been able to make graphics and worlds that look very real. But the challenge, frankly, from a game loop, from a game dynamics perspective, is how do you make those worlds act real, right? Physics and AI and doing all of that math actually requires a CPU that's pretty strong. And so when you think about kind of the typical trade-offs that you've had in games in the past, where, hey, I can have, a small number of enemies that are really, really smart, or a large number of enemies that are not so smart, grunts. That's always been a trade-off that's limited what you can do in the games. And from the fastest thing to make a developer laugh is, as a designer, you go into a room and you tell them that you want to build a scene where you're fighting in water, and you have a bunch of these enemies, and everything reacts dynamically to things getting wet, right? They just look at you and they're like, yeah, we can't do the physics for that. Like, you need a CPU with some power to do that. And so moving forward on something like Series X and in the cloud, and understanding, hey, this isn't just going to be something where it's going to look much better. It's going to make that world feel and sound much more real. We're going to allow you to do much better things with physics, like simulations, like those are the things that are going to allow games to take a giant step forward. And that's really what I'm excited to do. And as a publisher, I mean, there's certainly the bread and butter work we do, helping people understand the research that we've done into different regions if they want to know a customer that they're not familiar with in a different part of the globe, understand what their data pipeline and bandwidth is like in that region, understand where we think the technology is going, understand the shell experiences that we're going to build that are basically the stage for their title, right? Like they're building this pearl and we're this oyster to showcase that pearl. And really the publisher's job is how do you eliminate friction so that the game teams can just run at what they're really good at, and we can help support them with things that they shouldn't have to care about, right? They shouldn't have to care about building tools to allow them to look at how to optimize their engine and what's going on in picks, right? That shouldn't be their job. They shouldn't have to worry about building giant data centers across the planet, right? That should be our job. We can go do that. They should focus on the game and what's going to make it great. And so, simply put, hey, how do we just make it easier for them and allow them to turn things up?
That's good. And you mentioned as you're talking through this idea of this awareness. And I think it's really interesting to talk about what it means to have your game be aware. And I hear you guys talk about this idea of this streaming aware point of view. Maybe Jason, can you maybe elaborate a little bit on what does it mean to be streaming aware, building a game streaming aware?
Yeah, so like Catherine was talking about, today with Project xCloud, we're kind of doing what we call lift and shift, which is taking existing games that were already designed and built for Xbox and being able to run them in the cloud with the title not even really being aware that it's running in a remote data center. But I think there's a lot of power and I think there's a lot of opportunity if the title actually knows whether or not it's being streamed or not. And in this case, we enabled console streaming on the Xbox One today. It's the same technology. Like if you're actually streaming from either your local console, you're streaming from Project xCloud, what would you actually change in your game? So Catherine used the example of if I know that my game is actually streaming down to a mobile device, maybe I originally designed my HUD or my UI for a 10-foot user experience on a large screen TV. But when I'm actually streaming it to a mobile device, maybe I actually need to simplify the UI or increase the font size so it's more legible and easier to read. You also think about situations like multiplayer. Like many multiplayer systems are designed with this notion of network latency and how do I keep people together? Well, if you knew that all your game sessions were actually all running in the same physical data center, you don't have to worry about ping times. You don't have to worry about network latency. And one of the technologies that we announced earlier this week is dynamic latency input, or DLI. Not only did we build that so that we will have the most precise and responsive input possible. If you're playing a game in your living room, say it's a competitive esports game, or it's a game that's running at 120 frames a second, where input latency really matters. But that same technology will also be available in Project xCloud to allow a developer to actually measure their end-to-end input latency so they can actually optimize or customize the input experience when they're actually streaming to a mobile device versus when you have a controller in your hands, as an example. So once again, when we really think about the continuum and how do we bring these things together, as we design and incubate and innovate in these various technology arenas, it's really about putting the power and the control in the developers' hands because they know what's best for their players and the game worlds that they're creating. And it's our job to provide the best platform possible so that they can deliver on that creative vision.
Wow. So good. So good. I want to take that and I want to turn the question a little bit. And Rachel, let's go over to you for a bit. This week, there's a lot of news coming out from gaming companies. And thinking about how people are positioning hardware and cloud platforms, it's starting to feel like the story is becoming this either-or narrative. In 2020, Microsoft's going to release both Project xCloud and Xbox Series X. Now, Rachel, would you mind sharing a little bit about what is Microsoft's thinking behind this?
Yeah, Brian, I'm happy to. As we've mentioned, gamers and developers are truly at the center of everything we do. And for gamers, our vision is for them to be able to play the games they want with the people they want, wherever they want. And we know that our partnerships with developers are key to delivering on this mutual goal that we have. So we're taking our cues from gamers, from developers. And as Catherine mentioned, it is valuable for us to get these learnings and to constantly be learning about that. We know that gamers want more games, they want to play with more people, and they are playing on more devices around the world. And we know that developers are continually pushing boundaries, trying to reach more gamers around the world who are playing on more devices and more platforms. And so the Xbox Series X was really built for this evolving landscape of gamers playing on multiple devices, but also this thing that we're seeing happening with technology converging across console, PC, and cloud. We want both gamers and developers to feel unconstrained in this next generation of gaming. And so we are working with developers to unlock the potential for what we can develop and deliver to gamers together. And so more specifically from a developer perspective, Jason touched on some of this in his previous comments. We're really aiming to build hardware that unleashes their creative vision. We're empowering them to create how they want because they know what's best for them. And we're providing the tools they need for now and for the future. So this enables them to get their games to more gamers around the world, to more Xbox gamers around the world, whether they're playing on Series X, on PC, or xCloud. I think it kind of sums it up, the question you ask about, either or. We believe that the best experience for gamers and developers is the experience that's designed from day one, so it's better together. So I think you could kind of say our philosophy is an and philosophy. It's not an or philosophy. We will lead with the flagship experience on our next-gen console, and we will extend that to players who want to play on xCloud.
You said something that's super important, which is this idea of better together. And I think that is like a theme within just Microsoft and Microsoft Game Stack. It's this idea that it's not an or statement, but it's an and statement, letting game developers really bring the tools that they're familiar with and be able to work with the stuff they love from Microsoft. So I really like that. I'm curious, Catherine, this idea of better together, working on Project xCloud and Xbox Series X, from a cloud perspective, what are your thoughts on this better together story?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm so pleased you called on me, Brian, because I was dying to add one thing to what Rachel said, which was so perfect. It's really about this idea of choice, playing your games wherever you choose to play them. And we just had such a great story come in the other week from one of our preview testers. He's actually in the armed forces and he's currently deployed. And he couldn't take his Xbox with him, but he gets to play Destiny 2 through the xCloud preview. And I just think that is so absolutely perfect and, and really speaks to reaching people wherever they are. And then I also want to go sort of one point further with that, because, we talked earlier about reaching the 2 billion gamers. That demands, both looking to the Xbox world as we know it, but also what we call TAM expansion, the total addressable market that we can expand to. And, as within preview, one of the markets we'll be coming to is India, where India is a huge gaming nation today. I think, in fact, I read somewhere that it's, got the 5th most highly engaged gamer population. However, it's a market that we at Xbox don't know so well. So that is so fascinating as we work with developers to say, how can we bring these great games that we're building to new markets and new opportunities? And I really think that fits with the better together, that we take what we have and we bring it to new places and new people and new endpoints. So it just couldn't be a more exciting time to be part of Team Xbox.
Yeah, and it's like there's this whole kind of world where it's all coming together. And Chris, I almost want to ask the same question to you, is like, when you think about it from the design perspective, building better together is not simple anymore, just because you're having to deal with so many different endpoints and so many different customers and so many different games. Talk to a little bit about like what is the role of design in this idea of thinking about multiple products, multiple platforms, multiple networks?
Well, to Catherine and Rachel's point around choice, when you look at it from the player's perspective, players love games. What would they choose to do if you handed them a time travel device, right? Which is effectively what you do when you give somebody a cellular phone, right? Or something that they can take with them. Because they can't always sit in front of their PC or their laptop or their console to play the game that they so desperately want to play, right? People get tattoos of their favorite games, right? Like this is what they want to do, bar all else. And when they find themselves, physically standing in a line somewhere for 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 2 hours, however long it's going to be, their mind is often on that game. And what better than have their mind on that game, but to actually give them that wormhole, give them that tunnel, so that they can spend that 5 minutes or that 15 minutes, whatever it might be, interacting with the game they want to play. And sometimes, through xCloud, it's actually playing it. Sometimes it's through things like Mixer, what they're doing to watch it. And it's really design's role to allow you, sometimes you want to play, sometimes you want to talk about that game with your friends. If you have a device with you or around you throughout the day, what role do those devices serve? And design's job is to make sure that it's helping people connect to the content and to the people that they want to play that content with as often as they can, right? As often as they choose to, because that player choice, right? Physically, if I'm standing in that line and checked out, okay, cool. I want to play a game. I want to talk about that game. And if you give me a 4-minute window to do it, amazing, I'm in. And so on the, certainly on the developer side, you think about, well, hey, what does it mean to build something that allows you to play for, a shorter amount of time, or to play continuously kind of throughout the day in small segments of time, not just for, an hour or 6 hours that you're going to spend sitting in front of your console or your PC. And that's really what's amazing, right? When you talk about Better Together, it's about how do you give people the choice to participate in the thing that they love more often? And share that with more people. And certainly that was the goal that we set out to accomplish. And Better Together really just means being super attuned to letting gamers get closer to the thing that they love.
I want to give a plug real quick for some content that we had that was pre-done before the show taped. And it was this xCloud talk that we have up on our on-demand site. So if you go to aka.ms/GameStackLive and you check out some of the xCloud content that's up on our YouTube page on demand, there's some fascinating stuff that's going on around the team and how they think about building for the platform. And Chris, I almost just want to ask a real quick follow-up on, which is like, with regards to design itself, what are some of the challenges when trying to design a UI or a UX that can map across multiple devices?
Oh, there's a lot. For the user, I mean, there's literally like, hey, what's the type ramp and how do you make it work in multiple locations? Whether the angular pixel density is different on a 10-foot screen than on something that's, a foot or two in front of you, right? There's a bunch of just kind of technical details related to design. But really, when you think about what that UI is there to do, it's there to help connect you. And so the thing that might be appropriate in terms of, hey, I want to play right now, and this is how I want to interact with the game I love, is actually something different. And you might want to present more of a social view into that thing when you're looking at it on a cell phone in a short amount of time, because that's actually going to be the thing that then sets you up to play later in depth with your friends, right? It's how do you catalyze that group of people to get together. And when we talk to gamers, the number one thing that they say is, hey, I wish I could spend more time gaming. I just don't have enough time. And it's even harder for me to find crossover time with my friends to play together, right? That's the problem that they would love help solving. And so from a UI perspective, there's literally, how do you make this, this UI look good on a different endpoint, and what do I need to take into account from a design perspective? But it's also, what should I be showcasing to the user? Because it might not be that they want to play right now. It might want to be that they are catalyzing a group to get together to play later tonight. And so having your UI have an understanding of what a player has been doing across your game is really, really important, because then you can showcase that even within the game. Hey, we noticed you just finished, how are you going to get on later tonight or this weekend? Those are two independent things, but they're very much both in design's wheelhouse to try and fix. And I think when you think about the ecosystem that you're attached to moving forward, design is going to be increasingly focused on, how do I get players access to the right thing at the right time, at the right moment? Because certainly our job is to take care of things like the type ramp, so that when you're looking at, fonts on a cell phone, when they've been streamed, that they're actually as appropriate there as they were on a 10-foot screen, right? That's just stuff we need to take care of.
Awesome. Well, let's take that conversation a little bit, and let's go a little bit more into our journey with developers. Now, Jason, this is a question for you. Given this is a year that we're shipping both a console and a streaming platform, I'm curious, Jason, what is the approach Microsoft has taken in the journey of working with game developers? And then, Catherine, we're going to also ask you the same question, so hang tight.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny because Catherine and I often do this together because we really don't talk to or engage with developers just on console or just on Project xCloud or what we're doing with PC as an example. We really kind of talk to developers and lay out kind of our vision for the future and how we can help them deliver on the experiences that they want to provide to their players. So that means a consistent hardware platform between what's happening in the console ecosystem and what's happening in the game streaming side. It's a common software platform, common APIs. The vast majority of the code that game developers actually write should be reusable across the cloud, across the console, across PC. So as we've updated our API designs and our app model, we've really designed it so that it can work across multiple devices. And then really where we want developers to spend their time is focus on their game, making their game experience great so that players have a great experience, and then really kind of tailoring it to the unique capabilities of how they choose to deliver it. You know, simple things such as if I'm playing on a console, clearly I'm going to, prioritize or lead with controller-based input. But if the same game is being played on a PC, keyboard and mouse is critically important. Or maybe in a Project xCloud scenario, it's more about touch controls or making it easier for a player to play there. So, it's actually been one of the highlights for me over the last 3 to 4 years is as we've been developing these plans, as we've been challenging the teams internally on kind of this next generation and how we think about gaming and game development is going out and actually talking to the partners and, hearing their feedback, telling them here's where we see things are going, getting the feedback directly from them, and then adjusting and altering our plans. Because at the end of the day, we all just want those same great gaming experiences. And as Rachel and Chris and Catherine have said, it's really about making sure that the players all across the world can have these same great gaming experiences and doing it in such a way that we make it as easy as possible for developers.
Oh, that's awesome. And I almost want to touch on that again, too. You said something that was really interesting about working with developers. And it's this idea of we have all of these developers who are coming and watching GameStock Live right now and are participating in their Discord channel, following us on Twitter. For folks that are not currently working with Microsoft today and they're wanting to think about, the next generation of hardware, the next generation of streaming, what are some advice, some tips that you give in hey, this is what we've experienced working with game developers today. Here's some ideas of how to think about that. Maybe, Jason, you could start there, and then Catherine, we're going to come over to you.
Sure. I think the core of it is honestly just keep building games the way that you always have been building games. If you're building a game on PC today, we've made it very easy to take a PC code base and get it running on console or getting it running in the cloud. We partner very closely with all the industry's leading middleware providers and engine providers to make sure that they're optimized to take full advantage of what we deliver, whether it's hardware capabilities or some of the services that we have with Xbox Live and Azure PlayFab. And it's really about the part that's really exciting about this industry, and part of the reason why I love this industry is it's the marrying of creativity and technology. Yeah. And that's the thing that the game developers all across the world, whether it's, the largest studios working on a AAA blockbuster or small, super creative independent creators, it's about the creativity and it's about the worlds that you want to create and the experiences that you want to deliver to players. Mm. And it's our job at Team Xbox to really remove the technology and make the technology fade away in the background. And developers are just really focused on creating that immersive experience that players want to spend time in.
That's good. Catherine, how would you say the same thing? What are your experiences and what are your thoughts on how a game developer should think about building for this next generation of hardware, building for this next generation of streaming?
Yeah, I'm just going to start. Jason said it so beautifully. We often go out together and exactly what just happens. Jason just says it so beautifully that I just kind of need to go, it's what he said. But I'll try and add to that in that, as we talked about before, this first step of the journey that we think we're on is what we're calling lift and shift. It's the convenience of developing for the Xbox that then magically works in the cloud. And that's a really important first step. And then Jason took us through it earlier, and I also talked to some of the touch controls and APIs we're building around sort of providing more information about whether the game is streaming. And that is the next piece, which is the cloud aware piece, which just allows us to optimize games. An important point that we probably haven't touched on so far, but is absolutely something that we're thinking about, is this concept of what we're calling cloud native games. These are games that no longer just use the resources of the local device, but harness the full power of the cloud. And it's so fascinating. Before the world got stopped by the coronavirus, I had an incredible trip to Japan and Korea, meeting with a ton of developers, and so fascinating to see how people were leaning in to really understanding how the cloud could actually change the process of development, the iteration of development, where teams sat to develop, as well as then, and I think it was Chris who mentioned it earlier, this idea of frictionless play, and therefore what that meant for the numbers of people who could play together, or even some of the business models and monetization of games. And what we're really seeing here is just creativity unleashed. As Jason just said, it's our job to put the technology somewhere behind so that others can just leverage it. And our vision is for developers to be able to really leverage the true power of the cloud. And we're not just seeing this excitement with some of our larger developers. It's incredible the support we've had from Chris Charler's ID at Xbox program and the indie developers. And our message to those developers is really clear. We just want you to focus on your games and your gameplay. Don't worry about porting it to other platforms. We're going to take care of that. Between the console and the cloud, we're going to take care of that for you. And so that's what I think is so exciting about this period. And that's the energy we get as we meet with developers, is that this period is about literally this unleashing of creativity, and that can only be great for gamers.
So something that not a lot of people outside of Microsoft get a chance to hear, which is just like some of the high-level thinking, some of the philosophies behind why we're doing this. Catherine, could you maybe touch on just for a second of like, where do we see this all going? We always talk about how we want to put the gamer at the center. We want to make sure that they can play the games they want on the devices they want with the people they want. Like, how does this all kind of play into the larger mission at Microsoft?
Yeah, no, well, I don't know that I can speak to the larger mission of Microsoft, but I can certainly speak to how we view the vision as a team, which is it's all about ubiquity. Your game should be available to play on any device at any point that you choose to play it. And the community and all your saves and everything else related to the game just comes with you. I mean, think about it. We've seen this in video. You can watch your Netflix, I mean, I personally choose, and everybody scoffs at me, but I personally choose to watch most of my movies on my phone. But obviously you can watch it on any device that you choose. And I really think this concept of ubiquity is absolutely key. It's about reaching every platform. And it's about us, for developers, as I said before, really leveraging the cloud, and through our partners with Azure, which is, as we know, one of the world's leading clouds with huge geographical footprint, to really allow us to reach gamers who previously it was much harder for us to reach with this fidelity of games. So that's really our high-level vision.
That's good. And, I think in talking with a lot of the developers, especially as they're starting to kind of get to that next stage, one of the questions that, I think a lot of people who are not necessarily engaged with Microsoft today around Xbox Series X or Project xCloud is, for developers who are sitting on the fence, maybe Rachel, if you could answer, like, what would you say to a developer who's kind of like looking at this technology and saying, like, I don't know, when's the right time to get involved?
I think it's a lot of what Catherine and Jason touched on. Jump in, right? I think back to when we started our indie game studio, seems like a lifetime ago. There were 3 of us. We didn't know what we didn't know, and that actually enabled us to go do really awesome things. And for us at Team Xbox, we truly love hearing those ideas and seeing what developers can create, because we're not going to tell you what to do, and we shouldn't tell you what to do. You're going to tell us, right? And so if I, put myself in, my own shoes a long time ago, I won't age myself. I think it would just be jump in, right? Jump in, work with us, reach out to us, help us learn what we don't know, help us figure out that to reduce that friction, to help you be able to deliver those creative visions, especially as we think about, developing for both console and cloud. The cloud space is so exciting. I don't think we even know what that's going to look like. I always talk to the team about, watching my children play. They play together. They're on multiple devices. They're constantly going back and forth between devices. And it's where their friends are is where they go. I think when we think about the opportunity across all these platforms and all these devices, that's what Xbox wants to bring to developers, the ability to reach gamers where we see them going. And so jump in.
That's good. So let's talk real quick about some of the key learnings that we've gotten from development partners during the work that we've done to build out Xbox Series X and Project xCloud. I always love the fact of it's great to hear what's going well. What are some challenges that people just have in general building for the cloud and building for new technology? Jason, let's go to you.
Sure. So I think one of the things that's exciting about the transition of a generation is what you used to think of previously as constraints, many times they go away. I mentioned the I/O system and the fact that we're at the upper bounds of what's possible with a rotational drive. Now that that's no longer a barrier, it opens up all these new possibilities, but then all of a sudden we're going to discover kind of some of the next challenges. It's like now I have almost, kind of unlimited memory and I can feed it into the system, but now all of a sudden, certain limitations we previously counted on no longer exist. And I think that challenges a lot of preconceived notions. So I think there's that. And I think the other thing too is just, there's times where there's a member of the team who she mentioned, with Xbox One X, it was like getting a playground to play with. And then with something like Xbox Series X, now the team has an entire amusement park to play with. So it can be a little bit overwhelming to actually figure out, where do I want to invest? What are these new opportunities that I have? So I think the real guidance that I'd give to developers in the community out there is, challenge yourselves, think creatively. What is the gaming experience you always wanted to build? And, a little bit to what we've talked about throughout today, if there's ever something where, the software is not enabling you to do it, or the development tools would be more useful if they did this, or my iteration time needs to improve. We want that feedback. We need that feedback. We absolutely listen to that feedback, and it fundamentally shifts the direction that we go. So we listen very closely to the gaming community. We're all gamers ourselves. We all play on Xbox Live almost every day. We have family members that we play with and we connect with. But it's also true with developers as well. We want to know where we've gotten it right. We want to know where you're struggling. And it's our challenge then is to take that feedback and go away and come up with really creative solutions that meets the needs of the development community so that you guys can just focus on delivering that amazing gaming experience that all of us can't wait to actually play.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. All right, I think we're getting tight on time, so we're going to do what's called the lightning round. We have a set of questions we're going to ask every single person here. What are the most important things for a game developer to take away from this conversation today? Rachel, let's start with you.
Okay, I'll try to be super quick since you said we're tight on time. I think my hope is that one of the biggest takeaways from today is a feeling of excitement. As we've mentioned, we're in the midst of something, very crazy, unprecedented going on in the world. There's a lot of heaviness. I hope that anybody listening, whether it was a developer, a gamer, maybe a student who's supposed to be doing remote learning, that they feel that light inside of them, that they feel that passion that we all have for gaming. I hope they're excited about the future, excited about our next gen hardware and software, excited about how we can do things together and the things we're going to build together to reach gamers around the world so that they can play, watch, communicate, and create together.
That's good. That's good. Chris, let's go over to you. What is the most important thing a game developer should take away from this conversation?
I was really hoping to talk about what we've learned in relation to input and skill ceiling, right? Like if you tell everybody, hey, we're going to pack a stadium of people to go watch tic-tac-toe, that wouldn't be the case because the world championship of tic-tac-toe is going to be boring because there's no skill ceiling, right? It always comes out as a tie. And as we've gone down this route and looked at what the new generation of people growing up, learning how to use, play games on glass natively, which is different than certainly how I grew up, playing games on mouse and keyboard and with the controller. People can play games on glass to a degree and a fidelity which allows a skill ceiling, which is actually pretty incredible. And it was, 2 years ago when we kicked off our journey looking at that. I didn't think that was going to be the case. And now that we've looked at it both on the customer side and what the best kind of game developers on the planet are doing, people are really solving the skill problem or the skill ceiling problem. So when you think about pushing a game out, I would not be worried about thinking about a phone perhaps as the lowest common denominator. Be confident that you can actually make the game that you've built originally, when you were thinking about a PC or a console, you can make that skill ceiling, you can make that thing excellent, no matter where it's being streamed to.
That's good. All right, Catherine, let's go to you. What is the most important thing that a developer can take away from this conversation today?
Yeah, absolutely. What I would say is, look, embrace the new, be open to learning, and don't constrain your thinking by frameworks that have existed in gaming previously. I think we're in a period where we are rewriting the rules of traditional game development, and I think that's such an exciting period with huge opportunity. And the only way that we can really, leverage that is by being open to any amount of possibilities and just increasing those learning cycles. So be open to the new. That's my main takeaway.
That's good. And Jason, what is the most important thing a developer can take away from today's conversation?
It's kind of funny. I'm like Catherine. Everybody else said it so eloquently. I don't know how much more I can add. I guess the only thing that I would add to what everybody else has really talked about is just focus on the player. Focus on the gamer, just really focus on how can you delight that player. The need to play is just a fundamental human condition. And that's why I think many of us work in this industry and we love this industry because at the end of the day, our job is to create fun and there's nothing better to do. And so as long as you're focusing on the player, we're here to help in any way that we can. We want the feedback from the community, both players and developers. But as long as you're focusing on the player, I don't think you can really go wrong.
That's good. Man, so good. Well, thank you guys so very much for joining over the phone. It has been an awesome chance to talk with this. That's it for us. Malik, Kelly, over to you.
Oh, he took the console. Oh, anyway. Thanks, Brian. Well, Kelly, if you wanted to know more about next-gen hardware and what it can do in the cloud, we can all cross that off the list right now.
Indeed. I could not be more excited, and that was such a great conversation. What are you guys thinking? Malik, what do you think?
What do I think? Yeah. I think this is an exciting period in time. Next-gen hardware, Xbox Series X coming out this year, holiday 2020.
You can't just say it as an Xbox Series X.
That's true. Anyway, oh, sorry, you're right.
Yeah.
Xbox Series X.
Thank you.
So everyone out there, head over to our Discord and let us know what you think about it and tell us about all the things Xbox Series X and xCloud, which I'm super excited about. In any event, in fact, we've got some teams from some of our favorite games in chat as well. Apparently.
That's right, like Age of Empires. I'm so excited. That's actually my favorite game of all time, Age of Empires 2 specifically.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a great game. It actually caused me to kind of get into gaming and to do what I do right now.
Gotta love strategy games. Wololo, right? Isn't that the thing?
Wooloo.
Sorry.
Yes, thank you. You were close. You knew it.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, Malik, we've seen a ton already over the last 2 days. Panels with industry leaders, conversations with studio directors, and even some idea at Xbox Pros. What has been your highlight, and why has it been the panel that we just saw, actually?
Oh, you know what? I was going to say, I think I kind of gave it away, that was the most exciting. I think, again, we said it at the beginning of yesterday, a lifelong Xbox fan, and one of the things that I've always dreamed about is being at Microsoft during the launch of a new console. And the Xbox Series X coming out this year is going to be fantastic. As we heard on the last panel, the focus on performance, speed, and of course compatibility, the idea that you're going to have thousands of games from previous Xbox generations playable on your console. The SSD, which is brand new for a new generation of consoles, first ever generation that's going to have an SSD built in to the console, and of course just 12 teraflops of GPU power.
So just,
12
it's fun.
teraflops.
It's just fun saying that, right?
Exactly.
12 teraflops, of course.
Exactly. So yeah, Kelly, what was your highlight though?
I really like the accessibility conversations that we got to have yesterday, and like just learning about live ops and live services. It's incredible just learning kind of what GameStack is, and if there's any developers out there that are just kind of joining right now and don't know what it is, check out GameStack.com. Also, our YouTube is going to have VODs available of all of the talks and panels that we've had over the last 2 days. So if you did miss it, if you're just joining us right now, do not fret, everyone, because all that will be available soon, I believe. They keep saying soon with like maybe a TM soon.
TM.
Yeah,
soon
yeah.
TM. Because you know who's ever to say when something's going to happen. Anyway, one thing that I've loved over these last 2 days is talking to you, and you've said a lot. So let's check out what you said in out here. Our last panel on Next Gen Gaming features Xbox's Partner Director of Program Management, Jason Ronald. And due to technical issues brought on by our remote interviews, we had to use headshots, and someone has taken Jason's and doctored it a bit. A huge thanks to Enrivo for this. Let's take a look at this. Okay, so Jason, let me just say something. Wait. So Jason has one of the most glorious beards I've ever seen in my life.
It really is. Even just like the length, the pattern of it, how like half of it's gray, half of it's dark, but you also have that strip of gray down the dark. Like, it's really cool. It's very
very deliberate and very regal. I don't know what the word would be. I don't know, but
I like regal.
It's really cool to see he's just perching over Xbox, because he is literally the guy who's put everything together, and so along with obviously a great team, and so this is really cool to see. And I think we have a few more tweets, in fact. So let's see what we've got here.
I do think that was to scale, though. The picture of
Absolutely.
him. Yeah. It's gonna, it kind of actually, it doubles as a heater for your house.
It doubles as a lot, right?
Yeah.
I think it's funny because Xbox actually tweeted out a picture on Monday of, to scale an Xbox Series X console next to a fridge. So it's really funny. All right, so we have another tweet from one of our Xbox MVPs. In fact, this is Simon Darkside. It says, "My favorite quote from the team." Let's look back at here because this is easier to see. My favorite quote